All right, welcome to another edition of the Franklin Community High School Career Exploration Project. With us today, we have Gordon Cox. He is the owner and designer of Gordon Cox Design. They do publication design, brand identity, and it is out of Greenwood. So, Gordon, first of all, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Why don't you just explain kind of your role and what you do?
Well, I am a graphic designer. I've had my own business since late 1984, early 1985. I basically started my business. My wife convinced me at the time that I should try to sell limited edition lithographs. At that time, I was doing a lot of stuff in IndyCar racing and for the 500. And so that was kind of the impetus to go out on my own. I had a couple jobs early when I was out of school, but in 1985 I decided to branch out and try to do it on my own. And so that kind of just led me into desktop publishing, because that was right before computers got big in this industry. Mm-hmm. And so I actually purchased a computer solely because I needed something to keep track of the business, the business side of the business. And so I got a computer, and next thing I know, that evolved into the desktop publishing and brand design and logo design and that kind of work. So I kind of started to steer away from primarily doing, paintings and drawings to more digital things. So that's kind of how it all started.
So, so did you do like some of the paintings for like the cover of the program, or how did that kind of work?
Well, I did a few jobs for the Speedway. I never did a cover. I obviously at that time wanted to do a cover, but I wasn't at the point in my career where I was well known enough, number one. And number two, I always like to focus on faces and drivers and their helmets. I wasn't big on cars. It was just too tedious for me, cars and buildings. So I wasn't real well suited to do cover work, but I did do some stuff from time to time on the inside. And then that kind of, or the inside of the program, I should say. The context kind of led me into, I did a project for 4 or 5 years where I did a big lithograph for the winner of the 500, and they were printed and they were sold through the Championship Auto Racing Auxiliary at that time, which was the wives of the drivers, and it was a charity project. So I did the artwork, and we presented the original painting to the drivers, and then they sold the prints to fund their charitable organization. So I did that from, I don't know, I think it was 1990 through probably 93 or 4 or 5, somewhere in there. And then moved on from there. So that was probably the most prominent lithograph series that I did way back in the day.
That sounds awesome. That's as someone who's a big 500 fan, that sounds very cool. So I'm sure I've seen some of your stuff before with that. So as far as your education background and training, what kind of education and training have you required, and just kind of what led you into the graphic design?
Well, as I said earlier, the bookkeeping end of the business is kind of what led me into desktop publishing in the digital world, just out of necessity. When I went to college way back in the day, computer science was just really, getting started I graduated from Franklin College in 1982. So like most kids at that time, I really didn't have, I majored in fine arts and I minored in journalism, and I did a couple internships with some advertising agencies and newspapers. But I didn't really have a clear vision of what I wanted to do. And my first job was at the Indianapolis Business Journal, and I was a production assistant and then assistant art director. And basically that was back in the cut and paste days. and I did newspaper production for 3 years, and we did, up to 96 or 100 pages a week as a weekly newspaper. And so when I was in college, I didn't have any idea. And so, I did my first job, and then I worked at an advertising agency, and I just kind of got to the point where I was tired of working for somebody else, and the pay wasn't really good. And so that's when I went into business for myself. But as far as the schooling goes, I did not go to Franklin College to be a graphic designer. That just kind of evolved. Obviously, now there's a lot of specialized places that you can get schooling at, ranging from Ivy Tech to major universities, where you can specialize a little bit more. And you can even specialize a little bit more at Franklin College now. I've had a couple of interns over the years that have wanted to get into this line of work. So, it's just the schooling is important, obviously, but I am pretty much self-taught, because I had never even turned a computer on until I bought my first one to try to do my taxes. So I'm one of those people that sometimes I need my kids to help me turn on my TV or my DVD player. I can do what I need to do professionally, but if you ask me to tell you how I did it in technical terms, I probably won't be able to.
No idea, right? So how, or in looking at this, I mean, you've done some amazing things, and you can work for yourself. What are some of the pros, some of the cons that you see in this whole situation in your profession?
Well, obviously the workplace has changed so much in the 35, 40 years that I've been in business. The pros and the cons. When I first started, obviously you're responsible for your own well-being and your income. And so there's a lot of hustling that has to go on. And in my position and in the business that I'm in, I have to I have to be a creative person. So I have to be the graphic designer or the illustrator. I also have to be the director of sales to sell those products to customers, and whether it be in advance or after the fact. When it comes to lithographs, those are produced and printed, and then you go sell them. But if you're going to do brand identity for a company, you have to solicit the company to do that work. So you have to wear a lot of hats. You got to be the accountant. You have to be the marketing person. You have to be the salesperson. When I was younger, the pros were I was home, and I got to spend a lot more time with my kids as they were growing up. Than somebody who works at a Big 8 accounting firm who works 120 hours a week.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of pros there. There's obviously cons, because you're subject to the economy and cash flow issues and those types of things that you just have to press through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that would definitely be the part of it is you're working. You are your own boss, but that's kind of a pro and a con in the whole situation too.
Exactly. Yep.
So what type of person, this is obviously something you've grown a great business with, in the past 35 years. What kind of person would be good at this? What makes you successful, and what type of person may struggle a bit in this?
Well, obviously you have to be self-motivated. You have to, just like anything else. I'm a big believer. You got to love what you do. And I don't, there are times when this is a job, there's no question. But most of the time over the last 35, 40 years, it doesn't seem like a job when you're doing what you love to do and what you're naturally talented to do. So, obviously, that if those things are true, you're going to be self-motivated. It's not necessarily, there's people who are motivated. I know a lot of people in my line of work who are great business people, great salespeople, but their product is not very good. And then there's people who are very creative and create an awesome product who have no idea how to really sell it and market it. And you know, in my line of work, I know a lot of artists who express themselves by the work that they produce. And they aren't comfortable in going out, knocking on doors and selling that product because their expression comes in creating it. So, and that's kind of been true for me. I kind of got away from the illustration work that I used to do because I just, you know, to me, walking in to sell my artwork to somebody was patting myself on the back and saying, look how great I am. And I was never comfortable doing that. So just from a general standpoint, it's just like everything else. You have to be organized. You got to be patient. You got to be creative. You have to be original. You have to be able to see projects through from the initial concepts to the end of the project, not only from a creative standpoint, but from a management standpoint and a business standpoint. The things that would be difficult, you know, the aspects about this that would be difficult for somebody is that if for somebody that really doesn't take it seriously. You know, it's just like everything else. If you're going to be successful, you got to take it seriously and you got to put the work in.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, someone who's not taking it seriously and they're in that, it's going to be a rough ride for them in about anything, really, for sure. So with, how would someone prepare for this? You know, whether that's classes that they would take in high school or just in general, how could someone prepare for a career in the graphic design industry?
Well, obviously you're going to want to, you know, when you're in high school, you're going to want to research the schools that specialize in that. You're going to want to kind of get a handle on what schools are very successful in placing people who have an alumni base, you know, in a certain, you know, for instance, Heron School of Art, you know, that's an art school. They place people. And so they've got an alumni base and a support base that would help you do that. Obviously, you have to be competent as an artist. Again, there are artists out there that you know, create logos for people, and the quality is not very good. They don't have the talent, but they might be very good in selling that. So there has to be a balance. You know, you have to understand as a young person that, you know, you've got the creative ability to find a niche in what you want to do. And there's a lot of different niches. You know, there's logo design, there's publication design, there's web design. You know, obviously the internet's exploded during my career, but I don't know anything about, you know, coding and all the computer software stuff that you need to know, because I wasn't brought up in that time frame. When somebody comes to me and wants a website design, I only do the visual part, and I say you got to find somebody that's going to do the technical part of this. And so I just don't do a lot of that type of work. So you have to identify, you know, what you enjoy doing, and you know where your strengths are, and then choose a place to go to school and take the schooling that's necessary. This, you know, nowadays kids in high school are doing this for fun at home, because everybody's got the same kind of computer that I have.
Right.
So, you know, they're a lot more advanced as they approach going to college and going out in the workplace than I ever was. So, you know, you gotta maintain a portfolio. You have to learn technically, and then you have to do the internships and the applied workplace environment stuff, to where, you know, employers, whether you get hired by a company or you want to do it on your own, you got to get the experience of being out in the profession in a real world scenario. Because I think that's the most helpful thing. I mean, personally, I don't think that, you know, if you go the route of getting a job somewhere, you know, finding a company like Lilly and working as a graphic designer at Lilly, you know, they don't look at what classes you took in college. They look at how you did in those classes, what those classes were you took, and how you applied that knowledge in a real world situation. And that's really the most important thing in my mind.
Yeah. It's less about the, which ones you took and more how you would work those. Yeah, very very good point. So last one, I'll get you out of here on this. Just general advice for high school kids. It doesn't even have to be career related. Just anything you want.
Well, I'm a big believer. I'm a big believer in education. I I am, because I was the worst student in the history of education. I still have bad dreams about walking up to get my diploma and they're just laughing at me. So I say that from experience. I mean, take your schooling seriously. When you get to the point of choosing a college, choose it for the right reasons. And when you have your first inkling of what you want to do with your life, you get the practical experience as much as you can in many different places as you can, so that you will be confirmed once you get out of college or whenever you leave school that's what you want to do with your life, and you're comfortable with what's going to be involved to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. That is perfect advice for kids. Especially, as an educator, I can appreciate you telling kids to take school seriously. So that's also good.
Well, my wife's a teacher, and I'm a big believer in it. And I think if I had things to do over again, I would probably have been a teacher and a coach, because that's as important of an occupation as is in this country. And I think it's becoming more important as with every day that passes. So yeah. I'm a big believer in it.
Well, good. Yeah, that is good to hear. So once again, Gordon Cox, the owner and graphic designer at Gordon Cox Design. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.